So, quick question for everyone out there. Do you know why HBCUs exist? Or do you just know that they exist? Because most people may hear HBCU and think, that must be a school where just black people go to. When in reality, it started because black students didn't have a place to go at all. And once you understand that, everything about HBCUs makes more sense. Welcome back. And if you're new here, welcome. My name is Mr. Suero. You can call me Mr. S. This is the first video in a series that I'm calling MSI Mondays. Not just what they are, but why they exist. And today we're starting with my alma mater, HBCUs. I firmly believe you can't understand higher education in the United States without understanding HBCUs. Now, I'm sure many of you know what an HBCU is. Some of you have probably gone to them. Some of you probably have family members that have gone or friends. But why specifically do HBCUs exist? We have a whole category of colleges that have historic and black in them. But before we get there, let's start with what an HBCU is for people who may not know. HBCU stands for Historically Black College and University. And the word historically matters because HBCUs weren't created as an alternative option. They were created as a response to exclusion. A few misconceptions I want to talk about first. First off, people have a misconception that HBCUs are solely for black students. That's not correct. Anyone can attend. Some of the most multicultural spaces I've ever been in have been on the campuses of HBCUs. Remember, the history explains the name, not the admissions policy. And to understand HBCUs a little better, you have to understand their history. For a majority of this country's history, black students were barred from attending most colleges and universities. If you were black and wanted to attend college in this country, your options were either vastly limited or even non-existent. So you might be asking, well, Mr. Suero, then how did HBCUs form? HBCUs are created by a mix of community effort, churches, philanthropists, and federal policy. To get a better idea of how HBCUs were created, we need to understand everything that happened after the Civil War. After 1865, nearly 4 million formerly enslaved people were suddenly free. Freedom came without education, and without education, you had vulnerability. Education mattered immediately after emancipation. Understanding wages, political participation such as voting or organizing, and teaching future generations. Essentially, without education, African Americans were stuck just off the plantation, but not quite free. So who stepped in? Black churches helped almost immediately with gathering much needed community support. Northern missionary societies such as the American Missionary Association and the American Baptist Home Mission Society also helped in the formation of these new schools. The Freedmen's Bureau provided funding needed to purchase land and construct buildings, often working with black churches to do so. And community leaders such as Fannie Jackson Coppin, Julius Rosenwald, Booker T. Washington, Daniel Payne, and Henry McNeil Turner also contributed to the existence of HBCUs that we know today. Many HBCUs started as normal schools, Bible colleges, or trade and industrial colleges. Normal schools were schools that taught people how to become teachers, a job desperately needed for African Americans post-enslavement. Schools such as Winston-Salem University and Fayetteville University, and also Bowie State, all started as normal schools when they first opened, in an effort to teach the population around them how to teach the younger generations. Trade and industrial schools were also established around this time. Trade and industry were seen as ways out of poverty and out of having to work on former plantations. Schools like Tuskegee, Grambling, and Bethune-Cookman all started as trade and industrial schools. And last, there are Bible colleges. Spirituality was incredibly important in the African American community post-Civil War. Teaching others how to spread that ideology was incredibly important, and so Bible colleges were also established around this time. Schools such as Morehouse, Spelman, and Morgan State all started as Bible colleges. In conjunction with each other, all had a goal of establishing African Americans after enslavement. Early HBCUs weren't founded as elite colleges, they were founded as tools for survival and self-determination. And then there were the moral acts, especially the second one. The first Moral Act of 1862 gave states federal land to fund colleges, resulting in land-grant universities. Unfortunately, most excluded black students. However, the Second Moral Act of 1890 required states participating in segregation to either integrate their land-grant institutions or create separate land-grant colleges for Black students. Take a wild guess on which options these states chose. I'll wait. Instead of integrating their existing institutions, states chose instead to create completely separate colleges for African Americans to not have to integrate. This act directly led to either the creation of new colleges or the expansion of existing colleges and universities. HBCUs weren't built because someone thought segregation was a great idea. They were built because education was still a necessity in an unequal system. They were built to maintain segregation while still meeting federal standards. States choosing segregation over integration are why many HBCUs today are still underfunded as compared to their white counterparts. Many still fight for funding that's still owed to them today. So now you might be asking yourself, oh, Mr. Suero, that's great and all, but why do they still exist today if they were created for a specific purpose? Great question. Here's the part that people seem to forget. HBCUs still produce a majority of Black doctors, lawyers, engineers, and teachers. They provide strong support for first-generation students, understanding that advancing your education isn't an opportunity afforded to many students, and they still offer a sense of belonging and affirmation that can't be replicated anywhere else. Stepping onto an HBCU campus is powerful. HBCUs weren't created just as a way for people to go to another school. They were created because it was the only option African Americans had post-slavery. HBCU culture is unmatched on just about any other university in the United States. From their traditions to their culture to even the way that they dress, HBCUs are still considered a hub for African American culture. Even despite the limited resources, many HBCUs still excel because they understand the students that they serve. And before we wrap up, I want to clear up a couple of myths that people have around HBCUs. First one, HBCUs are easy to get into. No, they're not. Today, Howard has an acceptance rate of only 35%. Florida A&M, try 1 in every 5 students is able to get in. Tuskegee, Alcorn, Morehouse, Spelman, all incredibly difficult to get into. The second myth is they're underfunded, so the education has to be worse, right? HBCUs are just as capable of teaching their students as any other college in the country. The education is great despite being underfunded, which says a lot about the schools themselves. And the third and most common that I hear, only Black students can go or get into HBCUs. Again, incredibly false. Any student can go to an HBCU. It does not matter your skin color. Although there is a predominance of African Americans, it's not the only student that can get in. And I reiterate, some of the most multicultural spaces that I've been into are on HBCU campuses, and I stand by that. HBCUs vary just like any other group of colleges. They're highly selective, and some are open access, some are private, some are public. The difference isn't quality, it's mission. HBCUs matter just as much today as they did 100 years ago. And understanding how HBCUs came to be is important in understanding the higher education society that we have here in America. And this is just the beginning. In the series that I'm calling MSI Mondays, or Minority Serving Institutions Monday, we're going to talk about Hispanic serving institutions, tribal colleges and universities, and why these schools play such a huge role in access, affordability, and student success. If you've ever wondered why college feels so complicated, the history explains a lot. And that's what we're going to be covering on this channel. HBCUs weren't created because students needed special treatment. They were created because access to higher education didn't exist equally for both Black and white students in the United States post the Civil War. And in many ways, still doesn't. Understanding that history helps you make better decisions for your own future. And if you want to know more about why colleges are the way that they are, make sure to subscribe and like this video for more. I'll see you next week.